everybody, welcome back to Cosmic Life Astrology. Today we are talking about the Scorpio full moon and the week of May 12th. We have a very complex week ahead of us with this full moon and a lot of the other planets that are in play with each other during this full moon week. There's just so much to go over, so you may want to grab a pen and paper, grab a cup of coffee. There's a lot to discuss. We have the full moon happening at 22 degrees of Scorpio. And obviously the sun is opposing it at 22 degrees of Taurus. Well, the moon is also 2 degrees away from Juno retrograde in Scorpio. And the sun is also 2 degrees away from Uranus in Taurus at 24 degrees. So not only do we have a full moon, but we have Juno opposing Uranus. We have the full moon conjuncting Juno, and we have the sun conjuncting Uranus. And obviously, because those conjunctions between the sun and Uranus are not exact yet, they will be exact on Sunday of this week. And Juno retrograde is 2 degrees away from the moon. So as the moon moves along, because it's moving quicker, it will make that exact conjunction on the same day of the full moon. So we have that to start this conversation with. You know, the moon is in its detriment in Scorpio. It is not a comfortable place for the moon to be in. So that itself is going to, signal that there's a potential for some uncomfortable emotions, uncomfortable unraveling, and things being brought up, possibly from the past, that need to be dealt with and resolved. And it could have to do with relationship partners. It could have to do with things or places, people, communities that you're committed to, because we have Juno conjuncting the moon. And that Juno is all about what we're committed to. And, it's mostly about romantic partnerships because Juno is Jupiter's wife. However, depending on where this lands in your chart, this could be about other realms of life and other ways that you could be committed to something that maybe needs to be looked at, needs to come to an end with a full moon. There may be a culmination of something happening in that area of your life. When the sun conjuncts Uranus, this is typically a very shocking, revealing energy. It can also be sudden realizations, sudden insights, sudden downloads. Now, that energy is going to exact at the end of the week. We will feel it during the entire week. It'll build up until it exacts. And it'll take some time to release as well. So, we'll see the sun conjuncting Uranus affecting us not only this week, but in the early part of next week as well. We also have the full moon making a trine to the North Node in Pisces at 25 degrees. And Saturn is a few degrees away from there. So Saturn's at 28 degrees of Pisces. So essentially, we have the full moon trining Saturn as well. And this brings fated karmic release to mind, right? Because we're talking about the North Node, which wants us to move forward, wants us to, keep going, towards whatever path that we're on. And Saturn is making us do the work, but it's also about karma. And with a full moon making a trine to it, I definitely feel like there's some karmic closures, karmic release, maybe karmic patterns coming to an end. And this could also be, people may be releasing their work. You may be leaving a toxic environment that you work in to go work in someplace that is more fruitful and more positive and, healthy and rewarding for you to be at. This could also be, because Juno's right next to the moon, about releasing a karmic relationship of some sort, whether it's friendship, romantic, what have you. And we have a lot of other energy at play this week that is going to, if the moon and the sun placements themselves are not hitting anything natally in your chart, then we have other dynamic situations taking place this week. So chances are there's something in here for everyone to feel some effect from the astrology happening this week. This is very dynamic. We have Mercury at 3 degrees of Taurus making a square to Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius. And Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So we have the ruler of Scorpio making a square to Mercury. And Mercury is all about communication, information. And this could be about information, when we're talking about Taurus, it's very grounded. So there may be a respectable, way to go about this. But it's about our values. It's about, what we honored, what we thought was beautiful as far as love, money, all the finer things in life, what gave you pleasure. Making a square to Pluto, Pluto is, trying to dig things up and reveal things, potentially from the past, that need to be overcome in order to have a transformation, right? After all, we have the full moon making a trine to the North Node. So it's requiring us to, make a change to move forward, especially with Pluto involved. Pluto wants death and rebirth, right? And I find it very interesting. I don't normally talk about like current events in my videos because everyone has an opinion and I respect that. And I don't want to be triggering, different emotions that people may have about current events, but I couldn't help but see how much this is very interestingly timing perfectly with the trial that's beginning on the day of the full moon with Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever you know him as. And I think with the energy of Mercury squaring Pluto, there's going to be a very respectful way with the lawyers, right? Of them revealing information that the public may have not heard ever before. I know there's been a lot of people talking about this leading up to the trial, but I have a feeling there's going to be some surprise information and revelations that are brought to the public now that nobody may have known before. And I think there's going to be some karmic closure, some karmic endings and repercussions with this trial. Considering the timing of when it's beginning and the energy at play, I think it's going to set a tone for that trial. And that is just my 2 cents. So, moving right along, we have Venus also being another fun factor for this full moon week. Venus is going to be making a trine to the moon when it enters Sagittarius, which is a nice energy. Because we essentially, Venus loves all harmonious things. And with the moon in Sag, that's more of a fun, free-spirited energy. So that'll bring a nice little flavor to Tuesday. But we also have Venus then making a trine to Mars in Leo. And Venus is in Mars's home turf, right, in Aries. So when Venus makes the trine to Mars, she's going to be receptive to Mars since she's having a conversation with the ruler of where she's at right now. More interestingly, when this trine, starts to build up, Venus is leaving her shadow period after her retrograde. And so now she'll be officially out of the territory that she moved back and forth through during the retrograde cycle, the retrograde itself, and then the post-retrograde. So now she's going to be basically entering new territory that she hasn't been in a while, in months. And I think that's going to bring an opportunity for Venus to have this new energy, this new passion, a new way of going about things, because Mars is about taking action. And these are the cosmic lovers. So this also is highlighting relationships, male-female dynamics. And, you know, Venus in Aries is a warrior. You know, she's not in her, you know, comfortable domain. She'd much rather be in Pisces, a sign before, where she's exalted. So Venus is fighting for her Venusian energy in Aries, right? And we have Mars and Leo, which can get angry and hot-headed and heated. So there could be very much, you know, a war of wills, so to speak, or maybe even potential for people to get very passionate about someone that they're pursuing or interested in, or already, you know, in a relationship with. On the plus side, it's two fire signs, right? They're both in fire signs. So this could be very much a passionate energy for the good between a masculine, feminine energy. But I'm giving you all potentials just because, as we know, all the planets have their positive and negative energies that they could bring to the table. So I'm just giving you different possibilities that could be at play. Then we also have, and by the way, before I move on, the Venus trine Mars aspect is going to be active not only this week, but it's going to be active until the end of next week when they finally release from that trine. So it's interesting that this Venus-Mars trine is pretty much active during the entire full moon energy is active. So I do really think that there's going to be a lot of developments regarding relationships, regarding masculine and feminine energies, a lot of passionate developments. It could be passion projects, depending on, you know, where this is in your chart. But I think that's going to be some kind of positive momentum for most people. But again, you know, it could be passion in a bad way, where it's, you know, aggressive kind of passion. It could be some kind of, because Venus is not comfortable where she's at, and Mars can be very aggressive in Leo. This could be some heated tension. Even though it's a trine, they both have very dynamic energies that they're capable of in this combination. We also have Jupiter at 24 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter is essentially quincunxing the full moon, and that's another uncomfortable dynamic. You know, Jupiter can be oversharing, over communicating. There could be very dualistic possibilities in the sign of Gemini, the twins, with information that's being discussed. There could be two different decisions that need to be made, you know, and because of a quincunx being known to be a very uncomfortable connection, it could be something that you're trying to contend with. You know, if it comes to a decision, you know, if you have two options, that could be making you feel uncomfortable, right? Is, how do I choose? Which way do I go? What's the right decision? What's the right way to go about this? You know, if there's negotiations going on, you know, it's how much do I push to try to get, you know, my end goal? Or, you know, it's that kind of flow where you're trying to balance your expectations, you know, trying not to push too hard, but also, you know, really wanting something to come to a close, come to a head, in order to have a change, right? Because Jupiter being at 24 degrees of Gemini is also squaring the nodes, right? So again, we have the nodes in play. You know, the North Node is trying to move forward, and Jupiter squaring the North Node. And so, it's like, hey, I want to make this change. I want to move ahead. And I got too much information in my head. I have too many options to consider, too many details to go over, and it's difficult. It could be also emotionally difficult to contend with a full moon in Scorpio. But when the moon moves into Sagittarius, Jupiter will oppose the moon on Thursday, just about. And so at that point, we're going to have Jupiter looking at the moon in its home sign, and it's going to be a little more receptive, right? There's going to be a little more lighthearted energy with the moon in Sag. And so the moon's going to be having a conversation with the ruler of where it's at, with Jupiter. And I think there's going to be, even though it's an opposition, there's maybe some emotions or conversations that can have some receptivity, can have some resolve, can come to some kind of meeting of the minds. There you go. And so I think Thursday will be an easier day, especially with that Jupiter energy. Even though, oppositions can be difficult, but I think it'll be beneficial with the moon and Sag, and, Jupiter is basically talking to the moon, trying to bring, opportunity and some kind of expansion, and could be an expansive emotional situation. Is the negative side of this opposition could be being overly emotional, right? So watch out for that. It's not going to affect everyone in the same way, but giving you all possibilities. And then throughout the weekend, we're going to see the sun getting closer and closer to that conjunction with Uranus. So it's really going to be ramping up your intuition. Maybe, at full steam, you may suddenly get some kind of download, intuitive hits. There could be a sudden revelation where you just get this idea out of the blue that changes everything, especially because we have Uranus and the sun in sextile to the nodes. So this could change the direction that you're going, or it could change the way you're approaching a direction that you're going to maybe get there faster, or maybe do things in a different way to, help you get the result that you're looking for. Uranus likes to do things differently, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people, just suddenly get this out of the blue, like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go about this in a completely different way, because I think it'll be more resourceful, or be a better method to my madness. So, this is very much like, it's giving me this whole change of direction, change of situation kind of energy, with the North Node being in sextile to the Sun and Uranus. It could be something, if all of a sudden you're walking along a path and like a bumper car, right? All of a sudden you're driving in a bumper car. You don't see somebody coming up from behind you, and when they do, they just bump you in a completely different direction. I feel like it's like that, where something just suddenly just boop, and you're off in a different direction, or you end up in a different place than what you expected, or something just suddenly like breaks through and helps you get to where you want to go, right? It's giving me that vibe. So again, we have a very dynamic week ahead of us. There's a lot influencing this entire week. There's a lot of planetary alignments that are influencing the full moon. So I think there's something in here for everyone. I feel like there's a lot of relationship stuff coming up with Juno being activated by the opposition with Uranus and conjuncting the full moon. And, you know, having the Mars-Venus dynamic at play. I think there's going to be a lot of relationship stuff. And again, this could be beyond your romantic partnership. It could be friendships. It could be work relationships. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And yeah, I think we're in for a very interesting yet fateful, because the nodes are making connections to all this. So, you know, with the full moon trine the north node, we got Uranus and the sun sextiling the north node. Something fated is going to be happening with this full moon. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what happens, what you experienced during this week. Share the video, like the video, do whatever you feel comfortable doing to help me build my channel. I know I've taken a step back. It's been very difficult schedule-wise to make these videos, but I'm still here, still doing it. So stay tuned for more videos. I hope you all have a great full moon. Take care, everyone. Bye.